All right, welcome and welcome back. Let's try this again. Like I said before, you can do anything for 5 minutes. I mean, he says you can't, but you can do a snatch test in 5 minutes, which is 100 snatches in 5 minutes.
Yes.
All right, let's get into it.
Okay.
Here's how we approach it, and here's some things that might help you. Starting with the energy system.
We're not going to give you a breakdown of energy systems.
That's another video.
It's several other videos. What you want to think about with the snatch test is, are you aerobic or anaerobic? Are you using oxygen or are you not using oxygen in order to replenish your energy? You've got to get energy from somewhere, and the rate at which you work, the intensity with which you work, is going to determine whether or not your aerobic energy pathways are able to supply you energy, or your anaerobic energy pathways are able to supply you energy. Your aerobic pathways are awesome. That's where you got your stored body fat. It's a very abundant, high energy source. However, it's slow. So if you're going too quickly, if you're working too intensely, that aerobic energy pathway is not going to be able to supply you energy fast enough to meet your needs. So you're going to have to tap into the anaerobic, which is where you're getting into glycogen and all that stuff, sugar, glycolysis, and you're pushing harder, more intensely. So that energy system is faster. It supplies energy faster, but it can't supply energy as long. Ultimately, you're always using all of your energy systems. It's not going to be an all or nothing. It doesn't just go back and forth. But you want to think about the big question: what energy pathway are you using predominantly? Because the closer you can get to using that aerobic pathway, think of it as a continuum. You're going to be somewhere in this range. Everybody will be. With the one other requirement of the snatch test is a bell of a particular size, and that's the guarantee that it's going to be pretty intense. So it's not going to be an easy test. We talked about this before we started. Do you think you could do a snatch test 100 without stopping if you used an 8 kilo bell?
The answer was yes, with
Yes.
a little bit of wrist pain.
So 8 kilo bell is not going to be very intense for him. So he's going to be able to stay in his aerobic zone probably without any difficulty at all. The test will probably be downright boring. Maybe he'll get a little forearm fatigue, but it's not going to be very hard. So the intensity is going to be a big factor. So what we want to think about is, again, you're going to be somewhere in this continuum, somewhere where there's some kind of proportion of aerobic versus anaerobic, and there's going to be a relationship, an inverse relationship between the two. So if you're using more contributions from your aerobic pathways, you will need your anaerobic pathways less. That will make for a better experience. So the first thing you're going to want to think about is, okay, what is the relative intensity of this test going to be? So, I know some people who can knock out 100 snatches with their bell of choice without much difficulty. I'm not one of those people.
Nor am I.
But he's much better at this sort of thing than I am. So, there are going to be ranges, and some people are, maybe he's not going to be the best, but he's going to be better, and I'm not going to be that great at this at all. But there's still ways to train for it. So we want to think about where we're likely to be on that continuum. How easy is the total task for us if we've tried it before? Now, from there, we want to think about two different things. We want to think about our strength base, or our strength reservoir, and our overall aerobic conditioning. Even though you're not going to be using the aerobic system in its entirety to fuel you during this test, you will be using it for recovery. You're going to have some time, depending upon your strategy, where you're going to be able to recover. Even if you're just holding your arm overhead, you're still giving yourself a chance to recover. And if you've got a really, really great aerobic base, you're going to recover faster, and you're actually going to, the intensity that brings you from aerobic to anaerobic is actually going to go up. You can handle more intensity at the aerobic pace without actually having to go anaerobic. And if you can do that because you've just got great conditioning, again, it's going to make the test a lot easier. So we're really talking about prerequisites here. So what is your overall aerobic base? Are you bringing in a pretty good aerobic base? If not, you should do something either in conjunction with your training or before your training to get that aerobic base up. You can use kettlebells, you can not use kettlebells. I know some people who will not do any sort of cardio other than kettlebells, and I know some people who do, you like to do a lot of running.
Well, I like to do a lot of running for the last snatch test.
Okay, but
it's different now.
But either way, it was a method that worked really well, and I was there for his last snatch test. It was great. So there are a lot of different ways to go about it, but you want to get that aerobic base up. Another thing you're going to want to do is get your total strength up. Now, for some people, it's snatching or swinging heavier bells. I do very, very well when I just deadlift a lot. When I deadlift, my total strength goes up. I can tell immediately when I pick up a bell. If I'm deadlifting a lot, I pick up a 24 kilo bell and it feels like a 12. If I'm not, it feels like a 28. So getting your total strength up before going into your snatch training can also be helpful, because neurologically, you're going to have a certain perception of the weight when you pick it up. And if you pick up a bell that is the appropriate bell, but it doesn't feel heavy, you're going to be in a better position. So you're going to want to really remember the types of energy systems. You want to stay in that aerobic zone or close to that aerobic zone as much as possible, which means you're going to be as strong as possible, and you're going to have a good cardio base. Why? Because that decreases the overall intensity of the snatch test.
5 minutes.
And the more intensity the test brings to you, meaning the harder it's going to be, the harder you have to work, or the harder you do work, the more you're going to get out of that aerobic place and more into that anaerobic place, and it's going to burn and it's going to be terrible. Now, one other thing about that with intensity, a lot of people will go, they'll do their pre-workout, they'll do their hype music, all kinds of caffeine, and they get really, really juiced. They don't warm up because they don't want to get tired. That's much more likely to keep you in an anaerobic place. That's a high intensity way to be. You're keyed up, and that was the first few times I did it. That's what I was. That's where I was.
That's the first time too.
But it ended up taking me probably 15 minutes to peel myself off the ground. Whereas the last time I did it, no music, I was a lot more calm. I didn't pace around. I didn't do a bunch of crazy stuff. I didn't hype up. I did a nice long warm up. So it probably took me about 30 seconds for me to I wasn't completely recovered, but it's like, okay, I'm pretty good now.
You go mow the lawn, no big deal.
So you want to think about that as well when it comes to your intensity. Give yourself some breaks at the top. You don't need to fly through. You don't need to fly through all of your reps as quickly as possible, because again, the faster you need energy, it's more likely you're going to go into those anaerobic pathways to have to give you that energy, and it's just not good at doing it for a 5-minute time frame. So once you get that stuff down and you're really, let's say you're ready for your training, you got a good strength base, you got a good cardio base. Now you got to figure out what's your plan. What kind of lifter are you?
Okay.
So I'm not an endurance person. It's not my thing. I know some people who can pick up a bell and do, I just start with 30 plus 30 and, and then I'll do 20 plus 20 and I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, that's not me. I'm not that person. I've tried it. I've tried various strategies to not put the bell down. I have been unsuccessful so many times that I just stopped trying.
Yeah.
I'm an EMOM person. I like to use the minute as a unit of training, and that's very, very effective for me. It's a lot more comfortable psychologically, it's a lot more comfortable physically, so that's what I do. So I decide, I pick my plan based on how I am as a lifter. Now, if you're not sure, try a few things. See how long it takes you to do 20 snatches. See what your overall pace is. Are you faster? Are you slower? You don't need to crush it. You don't need to go super fast, but you want to see how long that's going to take you. Try to do as many reps as you can without setting the bell down. You may just say, hey, I'm gonna do 100 snatches as quickly as I can. I'm gonna just start a clock and see how long it takes. You're going to get some information, and then you're going to decide what your plan is. So if you tend to be great at doing, multiple reps, if you can do 20, 25 snatches without stopping, no problem, then maybe you're more that high endurance lifter and you don't have to put the bell down. You don't need to rest as much. If you go, 10, 12, 15 and you're starting to gas, your arms are starting to burn, probably not, that's not your wheelhouse. So you're probably going to work more within a minute. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to use an example of working within the minute because that's what I do. That's what you do as well?
Yeah. And I keep it simple when it's in the minute is 10 on one arm, 10 on the next. Some people use like a 10 and a 10 and a 9 and a 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, and count all the way down. I've tried that and it gets way too confusing. I do not want to be thinking about numbers while I'm doing this test. I just want to think snatch, 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 and then ask them how much I have left.
Which is an excellent point. You have to have your plan. Now, my plan is I give myself 45 seconds to do my 20 snatches. So if you take 100 snatches over 5 minutes, that means you need to do on average 20 snatches per minute. So 45 seconds is a nice time frame for me to fit that in. That organizes my training. I can do it faster. However, if I do it faster, I'm going at a much more intense rate, so I gas out faster. So I give myself 45 seconds to work, which leaves me 15 seconds to rest. So my plan is I do that for the first 4 minutes, which leaves me at the end of the test. It's going to leave me an extra 15 seconds of rest, assuming that it's still going to take me 45 seconds of work to do my last 20 snatches. So what I'll do is on that last minute, once I've done my 4th round, I will actually take from that 15-second buffer, I'll add 10 seconds to my last rest, which takes it from 15 seconds to 25 seconds. And I still have an extra 5 seconds left over just in case my pace slows. Maybe I need to do a few extra reps. You don't know what's going to happen. But the point in this is that I have a very specific plan when I go into this. I know exactly what to do and I rehearse it leading up to the test. So it's a lot easier. I don't have to worry about crazy counts. I leave myself a margin for error. I'm staying toward the higher end of the time it takes me to do 20 snatches. It really usually takes me about 41 to 42 seconds. Yeah. But by programming 45 and only giving myself 15 seconds of rest, I'm still training for kind of worst case scenario. So you want to have a plan. Very, very important. So if you're organizing your test by time, what you're really doing is working in work to rest ratios. So the ratio, work to rest ratio is how much work are you doing versus how much rest. So in this case, 45 seconds of work, 15 seconds of rest is going to be a 3-to-1 work to rest ratio. Now, once you have those numbers, you can go off and let's say do something else. You're getting your work in. Maybe you're tired of snatches.
Maybe.
Can you train a snatch test with swings?
Yes.
Absolutely you can. So if I'm doing 45 seconds of snatches and 15 seconds of rest, should I do 45 seconds of swings with the same bell that I'm using my snatches with?
No, I think you should probably go a little heavier. 1 to 2, maybe even 3 if you got the balls or the bells. The intensity is going to increase with load. So as a general rule, for a variety of reasons, a snatch is going to be more intense exercise than this swing. So if you are going to practice swings, even if you're using the same time frame, you're probably not going to hit the same intensity with the same size bell. So I would at least go 1 up, maybe 2. Well, it's really going to depend on you, but you can match the proper intensity for the right time with various exercises. Mm-hmm. You can do 45 seconds of work with 15 seconds of rest with all kinds of stuff, and you can work that into your training. So it's an awesome method. It saves, for some of us, it can save your shoulders, your elbows, your wrists. Maybe you're working around an injury or something that's not quite an injury, but you don't feel great about. That's a really solid thing to do. So get your work to rest ratios down, and that you'll be able to do that based on your pacing. So again, that's going to be if every time you do 20 snatches, it takes you 40 seconds, then that's what you go with. You got 40 seconds of work, 20 seconds of rest. You got a 2-to-1 work to rest ratio. Yeah. So that's awesome. You get more rest. But again, you want to make sure that's your time, that it doesn't drop over the course of the test, and you're not going to get fatigued. So once you got your work to rest ratios, you can really start forming your plans. You can make you can construct your workouts around that. You can find other things that you can do other than snatching, which is awesome, in order to set up. There are a few different methods specifically to prep for a snatch test that are popular, that have worked. I know people have done all of them. The first one is the timeless method. Brett Jones talks a lot about timeless. Timeless doesn't work well for me. I don't know if you've tried it. I've tried it. I do it for a little while, and then I think I run into the same problems that you ran into, and you just end up not wanting to push yourself as much. I need somebody to be like, yo, let's go.
Yeah, there's no, with timeless you don't get the same amount of feedback. Now, if you have all kinds of time, try it. It may be a great thing. It also allows for fluctuations in the training cycle. You're not going to feel great every day. You're not every time you go out. Sometimes hey, I'm going to do 80 snatches today in the 5-minute time frame, and you feel great, and then you come back and you try and do it a week later, and you get absolutely crushed. So timeless can be a great way of actually
regulating that a little bit.
Yeah, you don't have the same expectation every time, and it's also a really big clue as to where you are mentally and physically. If you find that your time, you start with, let's say, 9 minutes, and then you're starting to work your way down towards 7, and then all of a sudden it's going back up toward 8, and it's consistent, then you may want to look at your program and see, okay, I'm starting to get a little burnout. Maybe I need to decrease this, or maybe I need to rest better, get my nutrition down. So timeless can be really great to just see how you're willing to perform without having these artificial constraints of an actual program placed on you. So it's a great method. It just doesn't work for me. I've tried it a few times, and I'll try it again. Maybe it will in the future, but it's definitely worth a shot. And all you're really doing is just say, hey, this is the work. I've got 100 of these to do. Let me do it. Let me do it as fast as I can. But you're waiting until you're more or less recovered. You're not going right into it. What you're really doing is just letting your body naturally adapt. So it's a solid method if that's what you want to do. Some of the other methods that I see people doing is going heavy. Mm-hmm. If your bell is a 24, I see people training with a 28 or a 32. Yeah. That can be awesome in the beginning as a kind of get your strength base up. But when you're doing this test, you don't feel the bell you're using is heavy because you've been using this much heavier bell. Then
it's a little easier.
It gets a lot easier. It goes back to that intensity piece. If you can decrease your body's in your brain's intensity of the perceived intensity of the movement, you're more likely to stay closer to that anaerobic side, or aerobic side rather, and not tap into that anaerobic misery. Oh. So the idea of heavy work, it can be great, and sometimes you can just, if you're comfortable with doubles, you can do double swings, you can do double snatches. That's a great way to increase your total load. Or you can use a heavier bell, nothing wrong with that. You're gonna wanna do lower rep, watch the wear and tear, and slowly work toward the completion of the reps with heavier bells. Great way to go. Another way is you can do endurance stuff. Yeah. You can tack that on. For a while we worked doing barbell work, and at the end of our barbell work we would do 1 round of snatches, but we were doing this every day, and I was up to working with the 28 bell, 25 plus 25. Yeah. And when I went to do my snatch test after that, the bell felt light because I was only using a 24, and 10 plus 10 feels like nothing when you're doing 25 plus 25. Sure. So getting the endurance going, you'll get the local muscle endurance which you need, and just your overall perception of the activity is easier. So again, it's going to lower that intensity piece.
I think I like a little bit of a mixed bag when it comes to this, and I sort of, knowing that I do a snatch test, I guess it's roughly about every year, maybe every 2 years, depending upon what I'm working with here. But I'll often start with endurance and maybe even using a lighter bell just to get used to 20 reps on a side with one size down for me, which is a 20 kilo, and do that for a few weeks just to dial in technique, and 2, I'm a big fan of like the rhythm and the relax. Like when Roger's saying he uses 45 seconds. That gives him some wiggle room, and because it really does take about 40 to 42 seconds on average. But you don't want to, at least in my experience, I don't want to be up there gripping this bell so tight that it's going. I like to go up and chill and back down and just find a rhythm in it and just focus on relaxation. Then currently I move into, I'm doing a heavier bell, sort of EMOM related thing, and I'm also doing a little bit of like a quicken to dead protocol where it's 5 on every 30 with a little bit heavier bell, just to kind of try and challenge myself in that capacity and give myself the ability to learn how to recover. in that short amount of time, because you get about 15 seconds to recover, and it's like, can I do that? And it can be anything. There's so much to it. You really do gotta experiment what works for you. But I think one thing that's important is when you identify what works, you should probably stick to it. And don't go for the next shiny object that comes along. There's going to be a lot of articles, there's going to be a lot of people that tell you stuff, and whether you do what we suggest here or what gets fed to you through your Instagram or your email list, give yourself time. Don't be like, oh, I got 4 weeks of my snatch test, I'm going to try everything in the book. Give yourself 6 to 8 weeks. Use a couple weeks to try everything in the book, and then identify and spend the next 6 weeks or four weeks really dialing it in.
One thing I want to point out is we're going over some basic things to think about. What I would ultimately like to see you do is think about these things in the abstract, and then go to the internet and find. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of great programs out there. I'm going to name a few people that I've had familiar with their stuff. I know these programs are out there, they're free. Brett Jones has got an excellent overall strong first prep. The snatch test prep has been very effective for me in the past. Mike Perry's got a good program. Those are a couple that I can definitely call out that have worked well for me. But there are a lot. If you go to Strong First, you'll probably find 4 or 5 protocols that will get you ready for that test. But there's a lot of good stuff out there. And if you understand some of these parameters and these variables, you're going to be able to choose a program that feels right for you, that seems to make sense for you and your plan. And that's really what we want to do. And again, just because we named a couple people doesn't mean that there aren't other great protocols. It just, these are the ones that I'm familiar with, that I've seen work for myself and for other people. But there will be, for example, if you look at Brett Jones and his snatch protocol, he's got some time sets where he does some EMOM work where the reps are lower, but the number of minutes is longer. And then as the minutes get longer, the number of reps increases. Yeah. But he also has endurance days where you're doing as many snatches as you can, I want to say in 2 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, it's like you're just going for it for 2 minutes and it's hard.
So, I would say, Mike Perry's works really well because you're slowly doing kind of both. You're doing, toward the end of the program, you're doing 16 snatches each arm for 5 minutes, which gets you 80 reps. And if you think about training, if you're training at 80%, if you think your snatch test is 100% of your max, right? If this is a hard thing, that's probably a safe assumption. If you're training 80, that's 80%. And every time you train 80%, you're going to get better and better and better. Mm-hmm. So not only are you increasing your cardio and your capacity to snatch, but you're also doing more and more endurance, because now you're training, rather than 10 snatches per arm, now you're training 16 snatches per arm. So again, you're getting the best of both worlds. So there's definitely a mix and match component. But once you get closer to the test, something that I'm pretty adamant about is, once we get into the psychology of this thing, you should be practicing, I think, the way you're going to go for the test. Yeah. Especially because if you're doing it at a certification weekend, you're going to be exhausted. There's going to be chaos. There's going to be yelling and screaming, a lot of energy. You might get a little more amped up than normal.
Nervous.
It can be a pretty cool experience, but if you go into this without really being prepped and aware of what your specific game plan is, then the odds are something's going to go wrong. Now, sometimes you can deviate. With his last test, I was working with him. Usually they'll say, hey, you have someone there, kind of spotting you and giving you feedback. I was looking at him. He was doing great. He had 20 more snatches to go, and he was on his right arm, and he was just cruising. He looked strong. I said, keep going. And he trusted me. He just kept going. It was awesome. He didn't break. He finished in plenty of time. It was just a very safe thing to do. So yeah, you might get thrown for a loop a little bit, but overall he had his plan. He stuck to it, and he was very prepped. But either way, you want to make sure that you get your plan. You want to get your plan down, and you want to be ready to go. One of the last things I think we should mention is the psychological aspect. Mm-hmm. Now, when you hear people talk about a snatch test, especially a lot of these veteran coaches, they give you some nonsense of like, it's only 5 minutes of your life. and they basically seem like make you feel like an idiot for worrying about it, which is not helpful at all. When you've done something so many times it gets easy, you forget how often hard it used to be, and you have contempt for people who don't understand things the way you do because they haven't gone through it. So get that out of your head that you should have a particular reaction to this thing. Physiologically, the test is asking you to function in a way that is uncomfortable, and it's not unnatural at all to want to shy away from things that are uncomfortable. Right. So forget about the notion, just suck it up, because that's not helpful. That's not good coaching. Telling someone to get over it, it's only 5 minutes, is flat out dumb. And if that's your strategy, you're a bad coach. And if you want to talk about it, leave some comments below. We'll have a bit of a debate. But coaching is not telling people to get over it. Coaching is helping people get through it. Coaching people is not saying, hey, look what I can do. It's about, hey, what can I make you do? Yeah. So get those people out of your head, out of your feed, off of your internet. They're not helpful. That being said, there's a lot to training your mental toughness and your mental resilience. You can work with things like breath holds, cold exposure, meditation, anything to keep your brain focused. And when you have that instinct to quit, pushing through a little bit.
Just a little bit.
You want to challenge yourself. You shouldn't be redlining every time because you'll get exhausted, but you want to make it a point during your training, at least semi-periodically, at least once, maybe every 2 weeks, go to the point where you feel like you want to quit. Because if you don't push yourself to the point where you're uncomfortable, your body has no reason to adapt. So get comfortable with being in that uncomfortable place, and that can be a very, very powerful asset. For me, 90% of the test is psychological. Once I do my prep, but the hardest thing is for me to not turn off, to not stop the clock just because I feel like I can't breathe. It's rare that I feel like I can't snatch while I'm snatching. Usually when I have trouble is in between the rounds. Right. It's like, I got to do this again.
Here we go.
Right? So, what's really helpful for me has been to work various mental strategies to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And you can train your ability to endure just like you train anything else. So there's some good protocols out there that you can do. That's not really my strong suit. So I'm not going to make any specific recommendations, but there's some people out there who are really great at this stuff.
Yeah, we just tell you what we do, and if it's something that resonates, then great. Like I'll use visualization and rehearsal. Like literally stand there without a bell as it gets closer and visualizing the actual process going up, and visualize the snatch test, not just the snatch test, because that's going to happen. And visualize, this is where it was hard, this is where it gets hard, this is where it's hard for me, and I keep going. And I also like to carry farmer's carries for longer than I should, or at least what I think. And I don't look at the clock. I set a timer and I just go, and then it eventually feels like it's horrible. And I'm like, when is this timer going to end? And I don't know when it's going to end. And then it ends. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's do it again.
So for people who don't get why do you do why the farmer's carries?
Well, a couple of things. One, like I just told you, it gets really hard. And two, it helps your grip.
So you're practicing not quitting.
I'm practicing not quitting. And I'm making my grip stronger, because when you snatch, inevitably your forearms are going to get tired, and if you have stronger forearms, it goes all the way back to the strength base, right? That's part of a strength base. It's not just how much the bell weighs, it's how much can you hold. If you can't hold it and you can't control it, then you're going to have problems.
Yeah, your pull's off, your snatch is less efficient. When you're less efficient, you're spending more energy, which goes back to getting your technique on point.
Yeah, we could go on and on with all these different little tips and tricks that we do, and maybe we'll put some shorter videos out there on that. But overall, this should give you a good starting point, some things to think about and sort of plan accordingly. And if you need extra assistance, you can always reach out. We're coaches, and we're happy to give you additional feedback, or you can find a coach of your own, and you can hire us, hire them. I don't care. Just whatever you got to do to get there. That's the thing. And sure. If you're not planning to do a certification, that's cool too. The snatch test is also something really cool that you can say you've done. And look, it's hard, and you're going to feel a lot better if you're like, wow, I did that no matter what. And if you fail at it, then you're going to learn. And then you're going to get better at prepping for the next time you do it. Anything else?
No.
All right.
I think we're solid.
Okay, snatch strong. Oh, hey, real quick. Comments, download, all the stuff. Hey, great way to prep for the snatch test is the Bells by Bible app.
It really is that. That's what I used last time.
In fact, we'll post a few workouts in our Instagram feed in the highlights, and you can straight up download the app and just press start, and you'll see how it is. We'll have the 5-minute EMOM set to go with a special note from Roger and the instructions, and lots of other ways. It's great.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Like I said, stay strong.
You mean it this time?
I mean it. Snatch strong. 2 times.